So find missing side lengths. Biggest issue that we're seeing is that you're not setting up the proper proportion. So for instance, I know I have 28 and 16 matches with 28. They're in the same location. So I either need to find this small piece so it matches with 8, or I need to find the whole thing so it matches with this whole thing. What's your preference? The whole thing, okay? So 16 plus 8? 24. So I can do 28 over 16 equals x over 24. You can do 16 over 24 equals 28 over x. Just make sure you're comparing the same pieces. When you cross multiply, you get 16x equals 672. And then when you divide by 16, you should end up with x equals 42. So as long as you got 42, you're okay. Doesn't matter how you set up your proportion, even if it's different than mine. Do we have enough information for number 2? Yeah, we have everything we need. So let's do x over 40 equals 12 over 32. So 32x equals 480. Is that what that is? Yeah. And then divide by 32. You should have ended up with x equals 15. Still okay? What about number 3? Do I have what I need? Yes, ma'am. Are you helping me with number 3? Okay.
8 over 3 equals 16 over x.
You did 8 over 3 equals 16 over x? Yep, perfect. So you had to find the whole thing because you knew the whole thing here. When you cross multiply, you get 8x equals 48. So you should end up with x equals 6. What about number 4? Who can help me set up 4?
48 over 40 equals x minus 48 over 25.
Okay. So Evan found this piece here. The whole thing is x. This little piece is 48, so this piece is x minus 48. That works just fine. You could have also found this large piece, so let's see if we get the same answers. So 40x minus, I don't know, 1920 equals 1200. I'm going to add 1920 to both sides. So 40x equals 3120 divided by 40. You should have gotten x equals 78. Did we get x equals 78? Okay. So again, doesn't matter how you set it up because there are 5 ways you could do it and you're still going to end up with the same answer. Questions on 1 through 4? Okay. 5 through 8 are the same thing. Again, it's just finding the right pieces. Here we have pieces that match up. So 49 over 42 equals 56 over 5x minus 27. I can reduce this real quick. So I'm going to reduce to 7 over 6 just to kind of help me out a little bit. So 336 equals 35x minus 189. If you add 189, you get 525 equals 35. X equals 15. I'm going to set up the next 3 problems and give you the answer. I'm just not going to show the work involved unless we need to see it. Okay? Set up for this next one. I would do 36 over 8x minus 17 equals 16 over 28. So I found the whole thing. And if you do that, you end up with x equals 10. Did we get x equals 10? Yeah? Okay. If not, I can actually go through it. Number 7, same thing. I would do 2x minus 10 over 14 equals 4 over 7. And you should have gotten x equals 9. Still okay? All right. And then this last one is straightforward. 10x plus 2 over 63 equals 24 over 36. And you should end up with x equals 4. Questions on 1 through 8. So there are 4 questions like that on tomorrow's test. So setting up a proportion and then solving. So 4 questions like 1 through 8. So far so good? Okay. Geometric mean. What is my equation or formula for geometric mean? X equals the square root of a times b. Okay? So x equals the square root of a times b. So here it would be the square root of 7 times 48. Now we talked about this after the fact. You can multiply that together, and then you're going to have to factor it out. So I'm just going to factor from here. 7 doesn't factor, but 48 breaks down to 8 and 6, 2 and 3. I need to go sideways. Do we have any pairs? We have 2's and another pair of 2's. So 2 times 2 is 4. And what's left over? The 3 and the 7, which gives you 21. So the next one is 8 times 40. If I break it down, what is that? 8 and 5, 4, 2. Oops. What do we have pairs of here? 2's, 2's, and 2's. Right? 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. And then what's left over? Just the 5. Can I just give you the answers for the next 2, or do you want me to break them down? Just the answers? Number 11, you should have gotten 2 square root of 42. Can I do it? Yep. Okay. So it's 14 times 12. 14 breaks down to 2 times 7. 12 is 2 times 6, and then 2 times 3. So I have a pair of 2's, which is what comes out, and then left over is 2 times 3, which is 6, times that 7, which is 42. And then your answer for 12 should be 6 square root of 15. Are we okay with that one? There are 2 geometric mean questions on your test tomorrow, so make sure you know how to find geometric mean. Questions on the front? Backside, determine if the segments are parallel. So you want to know if these 2 lines are parallel, which means we need to know if the pieces are proportional. Okay, again, you're comparing the same thing. So like, here's a 9. What matches up with 9? How'd you get 12? 55 minus that 43 is 12. Okay, so those pieces match up, and these pieces are going to match up. So 12 over 55 and 9 over 46. And then you're reducing. Is there a number that goes into 12 and 55? No?
No.
Okay. So because this isn't going to reduce, that sure doesn't even come close to that, right? So your answer is not parallel. So you're setting up as if you were setting up a proportion, but you're just setting up the two different ratios and reducing if you can. Yeah.
What if you did like a different way, but you still got to still work?
So what were your ratios?
I did 43 over 12, 37.
That's fine. And it still doesn't reduce, right? So it's okay if your ratios are different. So just like when we're setting up the proportions and solving, there's different ways to set it up. So it's okay that it's different. You just need to make sure that you're using the proper pieces. For number 14, I can match up the 39 and the 36. So I either need this piece here or the whole thing. What do you want to give me? So I either need this whole piece, the whole thing. So 156. So 39 over 169 and 36 over 156. What goes into 39 and 169? 3?
And 13.
13 goes into both? So if I reduce by 13, that's 3 over 13. What number goes into 36 and 156? 12. So here's what I did. I'm like, okay, if I need this 36 to be a 3, does 3 go into 36? Yeah, 12 times, right? So then I checked if 12 went into 156, and it does 13 times. Okay, try numbers until it's all the way reduced, but in this case, because they are the same, your answer is parallel. There are 2 questions on tomorrow's test like that. Okay, so you have to set up the proportion or the ratios and then reduce. You need to write not parallel or parallel. If you write yes or no, you won't get full credit for that. Questions on those? Okay, now our favorite problems. The questions on tomorrow's test will look like 15 and 16. It will not be like 17 through 20. So it's just one variable. Okay? Not necessarily. It'll either be a whole number or a simplified radical. Okay? So looking at number 15, is this a leg or an altitude problem? Altitude. So that's what you should ask yourself tomorrow. Is it a leg or altitude problem? So altitude squared equals what? The product of the hypotenuse. So I know 12, and then I need to know this piece. It's 4. 16 minus 12 is 4. Okay. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. 3 and 4, 2 and 2, 2 and 2. I have a pair of 2's. Another pair of 2's. So 2 times 2 is 4. And is there anything left over? The 3. What kind of problem is 16? Oh, yeah.
Like I did it and multiplied it and simplified it from there.
Mm-hmm.
I got like another 3 times 2. So I got like 2 pairs of 2's and I got 3 and 2.
You shouldn't. So you did 12 times 4, which is 48.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what'd you break that down to? 8 and 6. So 4 and 2, 2 and 2, 2 and 3.
Oh, wait, no.
Anything else on that one? Okay, number 16 is an altitude problem. So same setup. 9 square root of 3 squared, the altitude squared, equals the product of the hypotenuse. And I think I did this one with you guys on Friday. But for those of you that weren't here, and just to recap, you're still squaring this. So 9 squared is 81, and the square root of 3 squared is just 3. The square root and the square cancel each other out. So 81 times 3 is 243, which equals 9x. X equals 27. Okay, so you could have a whole number or you could have a radical. Those are the only two options for your answers tomorrow. But you need to know altitude and lake problems and how to find them. Okay. Questions there? Okay, so let's practice a few more of those. You needed to find X, Y, and Z for all of these ones. Where should I start for number 17? The altitude. Okay, so y squared equals 25 times 56. Now, I know the square root of 25 is 5. So I'm just going to bring that 5 out and really just deal with this 56. Two numbers that multiply to 56. And then 4 and 2 and 2 and 2. So I have a pair of 2's. So that pair of 2's is going to come out with the 5. What's left over? The 2 and the 7. So my final answer is going to be 10 square root of 14 for y. What do we want to solve for next? X or Z? X? Okay. So it's a leg problem. Leg squared equals the adjacent piece times what? Times what? The entire hypotenuse. What is the length of that entire hypotenuse? 81. So it's 25 times 81. If I take the square root, square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 81 is 9. 5 times 9 is 45. And then lastly, Z. So Z squared equals 56 times 81. I'm going to just come up here. I know 56 breaks down to 2 times 2 times 7 times 2, right? There's where it breaks down there. So I have a pair of 2's that I know is going to come out. What's the square root of 81? 9. So 9 times 2 is 18. And then I have the 7 and the 2 left over. So square root of 14. I'm going to just give you the answers for 18, 19, and 20, and then whatever ones we need to do, we will. Okay? 18. For y, you should have gotten 24 square root of 10. For x, you should have gotten 84. And for z, you should have gotten 56 square root of 10. Can I do y and z? Sure. So y squared equals 36 times 160. Take the square root of both sides. So 160 is 16 and 10, 2 and 8, 4 and 2, 2 and 2, 2 and 5. What do I have pairs? I have these 2's and those 2's. Square root of 36 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. And then I have this 2 and this 5 left over to give me the square root of 10. Are you okay with y? Okay. I'm also asked for x. So x would be x squared equals 36 times the whole thing, which is what? 196. When I take the square root of 36 is 6. What's the square root of 196? 14. 6 times 14 gives you the 84. Do we still need z? No? Anyone need z? Okay. For number 19, you should have gotten x equals 48, y equals 80, and z equals 60. 48, 80, and 60. Do we need to see any of those? No? Okay. Number 20, you should have gotten x equals 65, y equals 60, and z equals 156.
Can you do the y for them?
Sure. So for y, it's your altitude. So y squared equals 25 times 144. Square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 144 is 12. 5 times 12 gives you 60.
Can you do a y on 19?
Any other ones on 20 while we're here? X for 20? Okay. So x is my leg. So x squared equals 25 times, what's the entire piece? 169. When I take the square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 169? 13. 5 times 13 gives you 65. If you don't know that they're perfect squares, that's okay. Just break them down and you still find your pairs. You're going to end up with the same answer. Which one did you, yeah.
So, if it goes like how the 25 did, like 5 to 5, you just square root 9 and you're going to 9.
So that, one more time, a little louder, sorry.
Okay, now you got the 25, and then you did 5 times 5.
Mm-hmm.
Once you square root the other number, that would give you,
You're multiplying them together. So the square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 169 is 13. And then 5 times 13 gives you 65. You can break it down if you want. 25 breaks down to 5 times 5, so I have my pair of 5s, which comes out. 69 breaks down to 13 times 13. I have my pair of 13s, which comes out. So if you don't see that it's a perfect square and you start breaking it down, you'll end up with the same answer. Y on number 19. Okay, so back to number 19. Y is a leg, so y squared equals 64 times the whole thing, which is 100. Square root of 64. Square root of 100. 8 times 10 is 80.
But when you do that, oh, never mind.
Anything else on those? So again, you have 2 problems like that on tomorrow's test, but they're going to look like 15 and 16. So you need to know the difference between an altitude problem and a lake problem. And you need to know what pieces you need. So for the altitude, you need to know the 2 pieces of the hypotenuse. If you don't know those, you need to find them. For a lake problem, you need to know the piece right next to it. I'm pointing to something you can't see. You need to know the piece right next to it plus the length of the hypotenuse. Okay, so if you don't know those pieces, you need to find them before you set up your problem. Questions on those? Okay. Last two. So Jennifer was standing near a building and both cast a shadow at the same time of day. Jennifer is 5 feet, I'm going to draw, 5.3 feet tall and casts a shadow of 8.4 feet. The building casts a shadow of 42 feet. Find the height of the building. How many different units do I have? 1. It is just in feet. Doesn't say anything about inches.
Do you have to draw it?
You do not have to draw it. If you can set it up without drawing it, that's okay. But so 5.3 feet is fine as is. That's not 5 feet, 3 inches. Okay, so you don't have to do any conversions with this problem. You are just setting it up. So shadow to shadow, height to height. And the one tomorrow is already drawn for you. Okay, so it's a matter of you being able to just set up the problem. When you cross multiply, you get 8.4x equals 222.6. X equals 26.5 feet. There's no conversion necessary. You didn't convert. The one tomorrow, there is no conversion necessary. You're just going to set it up and solve. You need to remember your units, though. I will take off points if you don't have feet or inches or meters or whatever the units are at the end. But it's going to look exactly like this, and it's drawn for you. Super easy. Okay, last one. To find the distance D, so it was hard to see, it got cut off, but this distance here is D. Hopefully you figured that out. Across the Lake Henry located points is shown in the figure. Find D, round your answer to the nearest tenth. So what should I set up my proportion as? Someone give me what proportion they have. Go ahead, Freddie.
18 over 31 equals D over 64.
Okay. 18 over 31 equals D over 64. That works. When you cross multiply, you get 31D equals 1,152. And when you divide, now here's where you're going to lose points. You have to round properly. So let's see what we actually get. 1,152 divided by 31. Okay, so it's 37.2. It's rounded to the nearest tenth. The tenths place is your first decimal. Because the second decimal is a 6, it rounds that one up to a 2. Okay, so your answer should be 37.2 feet. If you give me 37.1, you'll probably lose a half a point. If you don't remember feet, you're going to lose a half a point. Okay, so you need to make sure you round appropriately and you use the correct units. Any questions? And there's one question like that. So your test tomorrow is only 11 questions. And it should be straightforward and not too difficult, hopefully. Okay.